Hey all, welcome back. This is the final part 4 of the 5-part series, starting with 0 because I indexed them from 0. And this will hopefully be much quicker because this is just an opinion, right? And you might have different opinions, and that's totally fine. We'll talk about like the state of affairs as far as mobile is concerned, and some of the disadvantages of the KeepassXC key share itself, right? Let me just get rid of this conflict. We'll also just stop this. Okay, that's all the sync gone. Right. Right. So so I currently use KeePass to Android, and I don't use KeepassDX because KeepassDX is unusable in this master local scenario, which is very unfortunate. So it just doesn't cut it for me yet. But the good news is it lacks like two features. One of the first one is it cannot open multiple databases. And then second one is related to that. Because it cannot open multiple databases, probably it cannot do key shares as well. So because it cannot do key share, you cannot have master local database, and because it does not open multiple databases, you cannot even do that manually, leave alone automatically like KeepassXC does it. But there is an open ticket, and although, where's my browser? Alright, so if I open this, yeah, there's somebody who demanded like key share support on 8th of May 2020. Yeah, it's a long time back. I'm already old, but it's still not done. It goes on and on and on, and then people have even donated money for that. So I just suppose that at some point the developer will get some time and or help, depending on what they are waiting for, and they will incorporate that. Once they do it, everything's golden. Like KeepassDX would be my go-to tool on mobile, but currently as it stands I just cannot use it. It's useless for me. It wants you to share the main DB, but if you share the main database itself, you risk losing data, right? Because there is no master, there is no local, and if KeepassDX gets killed in the background or whatever it is, and your dump sync mechanism overwrites that database, and you don't care about the conflict files because we are just deleting the conflict files, you will actually have data loss because the local changes were not preserved and nobody else has it, right? So you will require a much more sophisticated conflict resolution mechanism, which I don't want to get into because it's just too much boilerplate to handle at that point, right? So unusable. The second solution that we have is KeePass to Android, but mind you, KeePass to Android also has no concept of key share. It doesn't know at all anything about key share as far as I know, but there is something in KeePass to Android that actually makes it usable as a master local sync. It has a feature called use internal cache only instead of the database that you pointed to. What I believe it does behind the scenes, I'm not sure about this, so obviously you need to kind of ask the developers or people who are expert in this. It kind of clones your source database into some internal folder that you cannot see on Android, and it only uses that database, the cloned cache, right? So it will read from there, it will write to that part. It won't care about the source DB. So your source DB, which you originally pointed it to, becomes your master, and the internal cache becomes the local. The only difference from KeepassXC is the sync between master and local that we saw. KeepassXC does it automatically. You saw the star right next to the name that when the network churn was happening. That won't happen. So the master will keep getting overwritten, removed, put back again stuff, and KeepassXC would have, KeePass to Android would have no clue about it. So you need to manually do it. So there's a button again which says sync with the source database. So the moment you press that button, it will check the changes in its local cache which are not there in the master, and will check the changes in master which are not there in the local. It will do a two-way merge or two-way sync, and you're back to how KeepassXC actually works. The annoying part, however, is once you do that, it actually forgets that your original intention was to only work on the internal cache, the local, right? So it goes back, it reverts back to working only on the master. So you have to, again, just after you do that two-way sync by manually pressing that button, you have to press the other button to say that start working on the internal cache again, right? So that's a bit annoying. You have to do two things, sync and then revert back to working with the internal cache, so that your data is not lost. If KeepassXC to Android gets killed in the background, it was still working on the local, and local is totally isolated, so data is always there. If it starts working on the master, and if it gets killed in the background, then all the changes that weren't synced to the network are going to get permanently lost in our dump sync mechanism, unless you are ready to handle the config files yourself, which we don't want to, right? So I've created an issue about like why does it keep reverting back. So I select work on internal cache only, but then it works, and then when I synchronize it with the source, instead of doing like a one-time two-way sync, it kind of does it does a one-time two-way sync, but then it starts using the main database as the database, right? It forgets about the fact that it's supposed to work only on the local cache. So then I have to press that work on internal cache again only, and then it's back to normal. But given there is nothing better than that, I am happy using KeepassXC to Android with this dump sync mechanism. The only downside is it's manual, so you need to manually kind of sync it, and immediately after syncing it, you need to tell it to kind of revert back to working on internal cache again. So it's two steps, and it's fine, right? But what I'm mainly waiting for is KeepassDX to kind of implement key share, or at least opening multiple databases. Well, key share basically. And once it does that, I'm just going to switch over to KeepassDX, because that'll probably be feature complete at that point from what I want, right? For things that I want from it. So that is that. The last part is about KeepassXC itself and the disadvantages of this. The only disadvantage, and this might be a big disadvantage for a lot of you, is that the key share currently is doesn't respect the groups. So it is completely a flat hierarchy. For example, if you wanted to share M1 and you had like a tree structure inside M1, it is going to flatten all of that into just one sort of level, and your master, which is this file, is just going to have one level, right? So these masters are going to have one level, so they will not preserve your hierarchy over here, which is kind of a bummer, right? But I've learned to kind of deal with it. So these days, like the things like my personal database that I have, I put it into a flat hierarchy as M1. The one that I want to sync only with the work laptop, I put it into a different group called, say, W1, and I create a different master for W1, which is only shared with the work laptop, right? And M1, which is my personal master, is kind of shared among all my devices, peer-to-peer, so that there's no single point of failure, and plus there is replication in case like one device gets bricked or lost or something like that. If you really want to create groups, the workaround is it's very tedious. So if you want to create groups, because it creates a flat hierarchy, what you want to do is share not the root of the group but the leaves. So there are like hierarchies, like if M1 has a folder called 1, which has a folder called 2 and a folder called 3, you want to share only 2 and 3. You don't want to share M1 or 1, right? And that will create as many masters as there are leaves in that tree. So if you have like tons and tons of leaves, that's going to create tons and tons of masters. KeepassXC will happily sync that for you once it's created, but to initially create it is going to be very tedious, and it's not something you'll probably like, right? Ideally, you should be able to share M1, and all the group hierarchies or the group structure inside it should be preserved. Then we would be golden, right, with this dump sync strategy. Fortunately, this is also this is in the roadmap for KeepassXC, from what I know. If you look at the GitHub issue, I think the author or the authors are kind of willing to do it as some milestone. So once that is implemented, this drawback will go away. Just crossing our fingers for that to be implemented, and KeepassDX to implement the key share, just like KeepassXC does, and we'll have everything at that point. That concludes, I think, the series. Hopefully you learned something, you found it interesting. I found it very interesting when I actually learned about it. Thank you for watching. Bye, and have a good time.